Hi everybody, welcome to video 3 looking at the Robin 400, and this one today will concentrate on the X-Touch Mini and Axis and Ohs, of course. So if you haven't seen the X-Touch Mini before, I'll just bring that up for the moment in a little insert here using my camera. You can sort of see the size of the device, and it's really 8 rotary controllers that we can turn, and each one of these has also got a push button on the end. We just press it in so we can use it as a switch. And the same here, we've got buttons here that we can press and turn things on and off here. So we've got 16 buttons here that we can program, and in fact they work in 2 modes. We've got layer A and layer B, so we can actually allocate 2 functions to everything here. So we've got effectively 16 rotary controllers, 16 switches at the top here, and 32 buttons here that we can use. So more than we need for this fairly simple layout that we're working with. I'll take that off for the moment, and we'll just concentrate here that I've got a PowerPoint that will kind of talk you through the layout, and then we'll look at the technique for actually programming it. Just to say that the layout that this, if I go back or put the camera back on for a second, that I've created the kind of paper overlay that goes on it, so I don't know what each of the switches is going to do, but it's a fairly it's a draft, a late draft, but it's I've made some errors on there, so you'll see some pencil marks. So I'll need to print. Well, when I'm happy with it, I'll print out a new one. So I think that the PowerPoint is more accurate than the actual layout at the moment. So here's my 8 rotary controllers, and if it's in layer B, I label it above the device and in black, and if it's layer B, I put it underneath in red. So layer A, first thing to emulate is the comms and the nav radio. There's only one com radio and one nav radio, so it's fairly easy to lay out. And on the actual cockpit, it's there are 2 rotary controllers, sort of one, the coaxial, one on top of the other, sort of stacked, as they call them, stacked rotaries. So one of them controls the megahertz, one controls the kilohertz. So I use my 2 rotary controllers to do that. And of course that affects the standby frequency. So I need a button to make the standby become active, and that's done by pressing on the end of this one here. That swaps those over. Exactly the same for the nav radio, a megahertz, a kilohertz, and one button to swap between active and standby. So the next rotary controller here controls, I've labelled it as OBS, it should actually be OBI, it's the omni-bearing indicator. It's the gauge that shows what's happening with the VOR radio and whether we're flying in on the right radial or not, and how far off the track we are. So that's what that one controls. And this one here is the pressure on the altitude gauge, altimeter, can never pronounce it properly. But anyway, we need to be able to change the pressure on that. And the last one is one that I don't really use very often, but I programmed it in just for completeness, and that's the drift on the compass, the HSI, the gyro drift. But I've got gyro drift emulation switched off for the moment while I'm getting this sorted out. So it's there, it's available to us. So that's in layer A. Layer B is really dedicated to the transponder. So the transponder has 4 different 4 knobs, one for each of the digits. So we program those up so we can rotate the controllers for those. And we've got one which controls the state of the transponder, whether it's off, on in standby, on altitude announce. So we've got that we can control with a rotary, and we've also got the ability to switch on the ident, so we can press the end of it and I send an ident. I've also programmed in the internal cockpit lighting so that we can control how bright the glare shield is, and in fact we can turn it on and off by clicking on the end of it. And the same with the whole of the panel, we can dim and brighten that and turn it on and off. and the text behind the radio as well. We can dim and brighten them. We can't turn it on and off. We can turn it down to 0 using this. And that really is it. That's everything that we need pretty much. So as an experiment, what it was, I've decided to use these buttons here as duplicates of some of the functions I've got on the Stream Deck. So I wondered if it was possible to run this all without the Stream Deck and just have one control panel to look at to see what that feels like when you're flying. So what I've done is I have allocated toggle landing lights, taxi lights, strobe, navigation, the heater, and if you saw my previous video, the annunciator panel has a test mode, so you can check that none of the bulbs are blown. So I've programmed that in here. And along the bottom here, toggle the battery, toggle the alternator, the avionics, the fuel pump, the fuel selector. There's only one tank, so it's on or off, so we can quite easily allocate the fuel selector whether it's on or off. And then I added the starter. We can press the starter from here, the parking brakes, and also the magneto key, turning it to the left and turning it to the right. So we can press on here and it goes from off to left, right, both, or back again. So I think I've got pretty much everything I need for a standard flight on here without using the Stream Deck. And so it sort of cuts down scanning and looking around for different things. So I haven't actually flown yet, just on the one device, to see if it works, but that'd be an interesting thing to try. So let's have a look at how it's actually done, what the programming procedure is. So I need to bring up my Axis and Ohs and bring that in, and let's also get the cockpit up and running. Here we go. And I will put my camera onto the actual X-Touch Mini so you can see what's going on there. So if I work our way across the rotaries to start with, they're already allocated, so I'm not going to mess around with those because I know they're pretty well working, but I will show you how I've allocated as much as I can. So if it was blank, if you started from scratch, you would add a new assignment to it. And if I wanted to program this knob here to be increasing or decreasing and I'm on layer A, so that's going to be my comms radio. So I would just drop this down here, and I would look for the comm as a filter, just to narrow it down a bit, and it's going to be a radio event. And I've got a whole section here, and I've got mine working on COM, but it could also probably work with COM1 as well, because it's the first radio. But the COM radio, and you've got fractional decrease, fractional increase, so that's the kilohertz, and you can do the same with the whole number, and it's the whole one I'm after. And you could do whatever order you like. So I'm going to go whole number decrease, so it decrements it. So I'll double click on that, and that puts it into here. Now I have to tell it which button that I want to use, and literally what I do is I just turn the knob and it detects it. Now with the rotaries, when you first move it, it really knows you've moved it, it doesn't know which direction. It's not until you move the second click in the same direction you go, okay, you're turning left. So for decrement you turn it left, and then I'll just click add, and that will be allocated. If it was an increment one, I would do the same thing here, and I would look for the comms radio whole increment and turn the knob to the right, and that's it. That's how you allocate it. So allocating those is really simple. If it's you're doing the kilohertz, you'll be looking at the comms radio fractional decrease and increase. There's one with carry as well, so if you go from 8, 9 onto 0, it'll carry that over into the whole number set. I don't like using that, I like to use them separately, so I use the one without the carry. And the last one is I want to be able to press on the end of this button here to make it swap. So again, it's the COM radio swap is what we're looking for, and I think it has to be the COM radio 1 swap to make it work. COM 1 radio swap. I don't think there's a swap on that on the just the COM. I think you need to use COM 1 radio swap, and that swaps the frequencies. Where is it? COM 1 radio swap. There it is, and that swaps it from standby to active. So that's how that's programmed, and you just literally press on it and it realizes you've clicked on it. Okay, let's close that down so I don't mess up any of my allocations. And exactly the same for the nav radio, that if you go in and do a search for nav and nav1, so let's have a quick look. I'll just turn this button here, and you can see that it has to be allocated as nav1 radio, whole, decrease, increase, and the fractional and the swap. So there the buttons are allocated for those two. The OBS, that one there, you're doing a hunt for VO1 OBI decrease and increase. So again, you just use that that filter. So if you here, I would set up a filter for VOR1 just to narrow it down, and there's your VOR1. There's the increment, there's the decrement, the decrease, and that's it. That's all you need to allocate. One for the turning left, one for turning right. The barometer gets people a little confused, I have to say, that what we're looking for there isn't labelled barometer, it's labelled Colesman. It's the Colesman instrument. So there's the increment version, and there's a decrease or a decrement version of that. So that's one that people do struggle with occasionally. And the last one is the gyro drift, and it's handy labelled gyro drift, so that's dead easy to find. Okay, so let's have a look at the rotaries on layer B now, and that's the transponder. So it is in its shorthand XPNDR, and exactly the same. So we've got the increase and the decrease version. So if we do a filter for transponder, have I got one set up from previously? As I have. XPN will do as a filter, and I would look at the transponder here, and there's the thousands increment and decrement, the hundreds, the tens, and the units. So it's exactly the same procedure to get those to work. The one that's interesting now, if I close this down, is the one here that changes the state of the transponder. What I'll do is I'll just get ourselves in a bit closer on here, and I'm going to turn the battery and the avionics on, so we can see things working. So just a recapping that turning this, sorry, let's go back to layer A. You can see that's turning and changing here the megahertz and the kilohertz. You can see how that works. Then pressing the end there is going to transfer it over, so you can see things working on here. This one here, this is what we were talking about back on layer B. So I can turn each of the digits independently, and what I want to be able to do is to change this bit here. Let's zoom in so you can see where I'm looking. I want to be able to change the state of that knob there, and that should work with this one here, but it's a little bit flaky whether it's going to work or not, and I haven't quite worked out why that is. What it's doing, it's using a script that I wrote. In fact, I wrote it for the Cessna 172, but it's exactly the same layout here, and it should just work. So let's see if I can get it working. Let me talk you through the script. So it's in my scripts here, and I wrote it. So when you write a new script, you give it a title and you decide which group you're going to put it in, and you can create more groups using this script manager here. So I've created a group for my scripts, and I want to have the 152 version when I'm trying to go up through it, so I'm turning it right. So this is my script here, and I hope you can see the details of it. It might be a bit small, but I hope you can. But it's using this variable here, so we would insert that sim variable. We want to look at transponder, the state of transponder, and we have to put number 1. You have to type in index 1 for it, so it knows that we're looking at the first transponder. There is only one, but you can have more in some other aircraft. So we'll have that one transponder. I don't know why you'd want more than one, but there you are. Transponder number 1. When we're comparing it to see, is it 0? So it's got these two things here. Then it asks the question, are they equal? And if it is, change the state of it from 0 to 1, and that puts it into the next mode across, which is the standby mode. So this one here, that greater than sign doesn't mean greater than, it means send it to that variable. So if it's a 0, send a 1 to it. If it's a 1, send a 3. For some reason, on is state number 3, so we're going to go from state 1 to state 3. If it's 3, if it's on, we want to go to the altitude mode, and that's state 4, so we go from 3 to 4. And if it's 4, it's going to go to the test mode, which is mode 2, so it goes from 4 to 2. So that's how this works. Look at the variable, check it against that number. If it's equal, send that to it. And the decreased version is pretty much the same, but it works backwards. So if it's 1, go to 0. If it's 3, go to 1. If it's 4, go to 3. If it's 2, go to 4. And so that's what it sends. So that's checking the variable, and that's sending a value to the variable. And that's it. So if you were going to write this, you would decide what group you're putting it in, give it a name, and save as new. If you edit it at all, just click update, and it updates it for you. So that's how the script works. So let's see if it's working now. Are we actually? Yes, now it's working. I have no idea why it's working now, but you can see it's going to the on state. So that's working absolutely fine. And what I've also done is I programmed the end of this one here so that I can get the ident facility working. So if I press on the end here, that should, oh no, I need to turn it on first of all. Let's go back to the state and we'll put it into the on mode and press ident, and that should work, and it's not working. Why is that not working? Okay, well, I'll come clean and tell you why that wasn't working. So I had to pause it for a few seconds to work out that when I was fiddling with this, I allocated that to the wrong button at some point. So I've allocated it back to this button here. So now if I click on there, save that. When I press on the ident button, there's the ident going on, and press again, it's off because it's an ident toggle. I couldn't work out why it wasn't working before, because I had it switched off, and of course the ident didn't work, and I was trying to work out why it wouldn't work, and in fiddling I'd allocated it to a different button, so I put it back where it was now. Okay, so that one now works on there. So we now need to look at this glare shield. Let's see if I can change the view slightly. And I'm going to change the weather so that we're more towards dusk, so you can actually see the lights in operation. So let's dim it down a little bit. Not too much, just a bit. That should do it. actually while I'm doing this I'm depleting my battery, so I think I really ought to start the get the engine started and the alternator switched on. There we go, so we've got the battery working now. Okay, so it's these knobs here that I'm emulating: the glare shield, the whole of the cockpit, the panel, and the brightness of the lights behind here. So if I turn this glare shield knob, I can turn it up and down, and I can also, with one press, turn the whole of the glare shield off and back on again. So that's how that one works. And if we just look at the programming behind that, if I bring up Axis and Ohs again, and let's have a look at how that works. So here's my glare shield, and it actually is using a script that I wrote to do this. So it's now one of these dreaded scripts, and the button on the end of it is just an ordinary event. The glare shield lights toggle, that toggles it on and off. So we need to look at the glare shield increment and decrement script. So we're back into scripting again, and I put this in the demo because I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not, so I put it as a demo, and it does work. So I want the glare shield. Let's have a look at the decrease first, or the decrement one. And what that has to do is it has to look at a light potentiometer, and there are lots of them. So we're going to look at number 5, and we want it to give us the answer in percent. It doesn't normally offer that straight away, but we can just change that. We just type it in. If it says number or enum, just rub it out and put percent, and it will calculate the percentage. And it works like this. Compare it, so I'm trying to go down. I compare it to number 10. To 10%, and if it is greater than 10%, we can change that percentage. So again, find a percentage and take 5 off of it. So that says these are the two numbers. Whatever the percentage is now, we know that it's greater than 10 because we checked it here. Take 5 off of it, and then we need to write it back to that light potentiometer, and it was number 5, potentiometer number 5 that we're sending to, and that's why it gets a bit confusing. We're working with 5%, but also talking to potentiometer number 5. So this structure here, we are writing to a key event. We're not writing to a variable, we're writing to a key event. And we're telling it we're giving you 2 values. We're going to give you this first value here, which is the newly calculated percentage. It was whatever it was with 5 taken off of it. And we are also telling you where to put it. We're telling you to put it into potentiometer number 5. So we have to write this 2 to say we're giving you 2 variables, 2 values to work with. And we're going to set that. If it's not above 10, we don't want to go any lower than 0. If you go lower than 0, we can crash the whole thing. So what we do is we just say, if it's below 10 and you turn the knob any further, just send a 0 to it, just turn it off. So this one here says else, and notice there's no E on the end of it. It is correctly spelled like that, else. Send a 0 to potentiometer number 5, and it's the same structure here, that it says it's a key event, but there are 2 values going to be given to you to work with. And so set the potentiometer number 5 to value 0. So that's what happens when we're trying to turn it down. We just need to check that it's above 10, so that we don't accidentally go below 0 by keep on taking 5% off of it, because it crashes the whole system. Incrementing it. Well, if you look at the second line to start with, the first thing it needs to do is pretty much the same thing, that we check the value of the potentiometer number 5 and we compare it to 90, and if it's under 90 we can get on and add 5% to it. So this says get the value and add 5 to it, and then write that new value to potentiometer number 5. So it's the same kind of layout that we're telling it there are two values going to be given to it. The value of the light, which is whatever it was before with 5 added to it, and we're going to send it to potentiometer number 5. That's it. If we're getting towards the top, if we're 90 or above, we might as well just turn them on to full. So send 100 to potentiometer number 5. So that's how that works. Just checks the value and adds 5 to it as we turn it up. But we also need to make sure that the glare shield lights are switched on. If you haven't done that, then when you turn the knob, nothing happens. So what I do is I send, every time I turn it to the right, I just send that command as well. Turn the glare shield lights on, and we give it a value 1 to say that's what it's true, that's what I want. So it's a bit excessive, but there's no way of checking really whether the lights are on or off. It's not worth checking whether the lights are on or off. You might as well just send the command, switch it on, and up the percentage. So that's how that one works on the glare shield. Let's come out of here and let's go back into the cockpit. And I'm going to turn the glare shield right the way down now. So we'll do the same with the panel lights. The panel lights lights up further than the glare shield. The glare shield just does this lower bit. The panel light does the top bar as well. So, and again, we can turn it right down and right up. And if we look at what we're doing here, it's the same thing. So I look at the script for my demo panel, but they're pretty much the same. So in my scripting demo, I want panel increase and decrease. Let's look at the decrease one. And it's pretty much the same thing, but this time we're looking at potentiometer number 3. So we check, are we at 10 or above? If we are, take 5 off of that value and write it back into potentiometer number 3. There's the bit which says two values going to be given to you. One is the percentage and one is the number of the potentiometer. If we're down too low, if we're below 10, just set it to 0. Don't bother mucking about. So else, send a 0 to potentiometer number 3. So that works just exactly the same as the other one. And the panel increment, well, I really need to get around to adding that extra line on here. So let's just go back and have a look at the on-off switch for the panel. Well, that one is panel lights toggle. Not really the one I want. Is there a panel lights on? Let's go back to my script. Interesting, doing live scripting before your very eyes. So back into my demo panel increment, and if I've got the ability to insert that, I will insert that here. So it's a sim event. Panel lights on. Let's turn the panel lights on. Let's see if that works. So if I double click that and put that in and update this script, there we go. Let's see if that works now. So let's turn my panel lights up, down. It works. Let's turn it off. That works, and then if I turn to the right, that turns it back on again. So I put that extra line in there to make sure for definite that the panel lights are switched on when I start to turn them up. But I can just press the button on the end and that turns it on and turns it off, because that's got a toggle function on the end of that. Let's turn that off, and the last one here is turning the radio up and down. So you probably see the text behind here. And if I turn that up, you'll see that that text brightens and dims. I'm not quite sure it's really that desperate if you're flying at night to turn that way down, but it's not really that bright. But the function is there, it's controlled here, so I've emulated it, and it looks like Here we go. It's the radio increase and decrease, and if we look at the script for that, radio decrease, it's like potentiometer number 7, and it's exactly the same structure of stuff as before. So you can copy and paste, or you could load it in and then save it as new with a new name, and then just edit the potentiometers to number 7. It will work quite happily. There isn't an on-off function for that one, so the increase one doesn't need that extra line put in to make sure it's switched on, because you can't switch it on and off. There isn't an on-off function for that one. It just works. Okay, so that's the scripting side of that done. Sorry, that got a bit heavy. A lot of scripting going on. Let's have a look at the buttons that I've allocated along here. These are much simpler. So we're back on layer A for this one, and the landing light is just a landing light toggle switch. Taxi is toggle the taxi lights. Strobe is strobes toggle. Nav is toggle nav lights. So they're easy to find in the menu system, and to put those in. Guess what? Pitot heat is a toggle. You can see here, pitot heat toggle, dead easy. The annunciator test. It's as simple as annunciator switch toggle, and it just toggles backwards and forwards between however this is set, whether it's set on night or day, and just flicks that backwards and forwards. Magnetos left and right. There is a function called magneto decrease, and you can see that's turned it down 1, and magneto increase has put it back to both. So those are built in for the magneto. Battery, toggle master battery, toggle master alternator. Avionics. Now I had a bit of fun with the avionics, getting that to work. Let's have a look at it. I've got two functions allocated to the same button. What I've done is I've clicked on long click to enable that. So my short click will run this one here, the electrical execute procedure, and that seems to switch the avionics on. And if I do a long click, it turns the avionics master off. So if I do the long click, I need to be out of this for this to work. If I do a long click, the avionics here has gone off, and if I do a short click, it comes back on again. So I've allocated two different functions to here, but you need to click on the long click first, and then tell it what to do for the long click, which is avionics 1, master 1 off, and the short click is electrical execute procedure, and it's be told to be number 1 here. So that's how that works. So the avionics is a little bit more complicated. Fuel pump is just toggle electrical fuel pump. So that's quite easy to use, and that you can see it working here. The fuel selector. This is going to kill my engine. Two functions here. The long click sets the selector to position number 0, and the short click here sets it to number 1. In fact, I could probably get that down to one function now to make sure it works. Just have a look at, is it working? So my fuel selector, long click off, short click on. So that's working. I can probably get that down onto one button now. I understand more about how this long click and short click's working. Okay, starter. So it's starter 1 set is the one that we've go from there. But if you just press it once, it just blips the starter. So what we need to do is to have it to repeat, so that when I hold the button down, it continues to run the starter until the engine catches, and then I can let go of it. So you do need to click and put the repeat action on that one, so that it works all the time you're holding it down. Brakes is just parking brakes, and that's a straightforward toggle for the parking brake here. So nothing too complicated in that one. So most of the ones on here are just toggles, and most of them are pretty easy to use. The avionics one takes some thinking, the starter and the fuel selector takes a bit of thinking for that one to do. Let's have a look at that, the fuel selector. These are in alphabetical order, so it's not too hard to find them. So that's one's got the long click, so I'm going to put the short one on here and see if that works. So let's put fuel selector set. Oh, I got that. So yeah, fuel selector set. Let's drop that in, and that's going to put it to position number 1 just on an ordinary short click. So we'll save that. And one of these has got to go. That one's okay. Long click, short click. That one there, we can delete that one. And let's see if that works. If not, I'll have to come back and fix it. So your fuel selector, short click should put it to 1, long click turns it off. Yep, that's works. That's working now just with one allocation. Long click, short click. And that seems to be working absolutely fine. Okay, so yeah, a bit of tidying up. Right, I think we'll leave it there. That's been a long enough video for you to work your way through. What I will do in the next video is I will show you how I program these indicator lights, so you can see whether the battery is on or not, or the landing lights are on or off. So we'll do a little bit of MIDI work on the next video. Okay, so I'll see you later for that one.